Hey everybody, my name is Corey McCullough. I'm an author and I write fantasy and science fiction, among other things. And a couple of weeks ago, I was on the Bald and Balding book show with Ro and Mike. And these are a couple highlights of my visit with them. And we talk about some book stuff, we talk about some writing stuff, and we got a little bit into the weeds on techie sort of stuff that kind of runs parallel to writing. So without further ado, here are some highlights from my time with Ro and Mike.
So Corey, you are the author of the Fallen Odyssey and several other books as well. Tell us about them, because we may not talk about them again tonight.
All right. We're going to be all over the place, huh? So, yeah, I'm the author of the Fallen Odyssey. I've got them all right here. It's about a character from the real world who wakes up in a fantasy world. And the way I kind of describe it to people is if you took the plot line of The Wizard of Oz, but then put it in more of a Game of Thrones sort of world, it's kind of a twist on the chosen one trope. So he is a 17-year-old from the real world who wakes up and he's told, like, oh, you're the chosen one, but he's got no skills, no powers. He's not necessarily very smart. He doesn't have a clue what he's doing. And so it's kind of like a twist on that trope where everybody's telling him this, but he's just trying to survive. And I did write this to be a complete standalone fantasy novel. So it doesn't really end on a cliffhanger, that sort of thing. But spoiler alert, the story wasn't over. So I went back in book 2, and this is the Fallen Aeneid. And that led to book 3 called Shadows of the Fallen.
Nice.
And
damn those standalone books, huh?
I know. It never works out that way, does it?
The standalone book is book 1 in a 5-book series.
That's right.
Let's call my next series the standalone series.
It was meant to be 3 books, and then it expanded into 4. And then book 4, I was telling you guys, ended up being 250,000 words, which is like 1,000 pages long. So I split that into 2, which is a lot harder than you would think it would be, because then you've got to come up with a logical beginning, middle, and end for your 2 parts. But so now it's going to be a 5-book series. Books 4 and 5 are coming out on the exact same day later on this year, because I didn't want to keep people waiting for this story that I keep telling them is almost over.
What is your favorite part of the writing process?
Oh, man.
Wow, a craft question. Look at you.
Yeah, I love it.
I have it written over here in my list.
There's a moment, and you can never predict when it is or how it's going to go. But there's a moment where it's like puzzle pieces all of a sudden fall into place. And sometimes it's early in the process when you're still trying to figure out what the story is. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I get it. And then other times I've had it happen after, the book is in its final draft. And then, all of a sudden something clicks and I'm like, wait, I've got to include this earlier in the story, and then that all makes sense. And I think it's a weird thing, and I don't want to get too too out there, too metaphysical about it or something, but it's like there's this thing where you're discovering the story more than you're creating it. And there's times when it's just like, oh, that was waiting for me there the whole time. I just was too dumb to see it until now. And something clicks together and it all makes sense. Terry Brooks has this how to write book that is called Sometimes the Magic Works. And that's just like, that's a perfect way to describe the writing process. It's just like, sometimes the magic works. I used to be like the classic pantser, the discovery writer who you just start out writing and you just see where the story goes. But over the past few years, like you said, having kids all the time, I don't have always the amount of time that I would like to sit down and just write if the inspiration strikes and see where the story's going. And so I've ended up being more of an outliner. And the only difference that I've really found between those two is just like, would you rather do the bulk of your work on the front end or the back end? Because when you discovery write and you write the whole thing, you get toward the end and then you're just like, oh, now I know what this story's about. And now I need to fix all the junk that I threw in there that doesn't fit, and I need to add these things that, you know, make it fit. But if you do it the other way, you could be working on this story for days or weeks or months, and you still haven't written a single line. You know, it might just be an outline or an Excel spreadsheet where you're like filling in subplots or something. So I think that's my favorite part, is when something finally clicks and it's like all the hard work you've been doing to to build this wall brick by brick, and you're just like, it's hard. And then all of a sudden something just clicks and you're like, aha, okay, this is what I've been chasing all this time.
For you, when you decide, you know, oh, I have to make these changes, like you're on chapter 17, you're like, no, in chapter 3, if I change, you know, how do you keep that documented so you know to do that when you go back to chapter 3? Do you change it immediately, or do you just write it down somewhere and keep going?
I guess it depends. Sometimes I go back and change it right away, but usually what I'm trying to do, especially if it's the first time through a story, I'm writing the first draft, I'm usually trying to get through that first draft as quick as I can. And so usually I'm just like, I'll just make a note, you know, within the document. Maybe I put it in brackets, or like, you know, I highlight it or something, make a note to myself and say, go back and fix this in chapter 3 or whatever. But I'm usually just trying to get through the first draft as quickly as I can, because I mean, whenever people have asked me about writing, I'm always like, you know, don't read what you wrote the day before, because that's been something that has, like, that for a long time, that kept me from writing anything more, because you end up going back and you're revising what you wrote the day before, or you're getting in your head saying, oh, this isn't as good as I remembered or whatever. And the best thing for me, that's the thing about writing advice, is like, you can't listen to anybody. You can listen to everybody's writing advice, but don't take any of that advice unless it works for you. It's like, so
I would have said the exact opposite. I go back to the last chapter and reread it, and I'll touch up a couple things here and there, but it gets me back into the flow of the story again, so I know, okay, this is where I need to pick up from, you know, because this is what's just happened, and it's fresh in my head, and I can go.
That's how your creative process works. And for me, that's like, whenever I do that, it's like I'm shooting myself in the foot. I'm getting off on the wrong start. And like, the best thing I can do is just start writing and just assume that everything before that made sense and was good, and I'll fix it later, you know?
So essentially the whole self-help writing kind of space is bull. Writing is just one of those things you need to fall on your face a few times and figure out what you're going to do.
I think that it's all true, but it's different for everybody. Right. So you can't, if you listen to all of the writing advice, you'd be having these completely conflicting things that you thought you were supposed to do. You know, you have to write every day, or you have to set a certain word count goal per day, or you have to do it this way. It's like, the only way that you figure out how to write is just by writing a lot. And then you figure out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. I mean, I would say there's some good books on it. Stephen King's book on writing. I love that one, because he's got some practical advice, but it's mostly just his experience of writing and how he's gone through the process and changed over the years. I mentioned the Terry Brooks one. That's not one that many people have ever heard of, but that one is a really cool one. But all of these things I've taken, you know, I've learned little snippets of things from these different sources, and then ended up coming up with what works for me.
Yeah, you cobble together whatever, and yeah.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So I'll just say, for me, when I have to change like chapter 3, I put on a Post-it note and I stick it on my monitor. I have two 25-inch monitors, and by the end, it's like two suns shining back at me. And I'm like, I got to wrap this up. I'm running out of space, or else I have to start another.
Then, as you fix them, you're saying, he loves me not. He loves me not.
Right with what program do you use?
I use just Microsoft Word. but I use like the mobile app for it also, and I make sure that it's all synced up to the cloud. And then I usually am just typing, but I'll sometimes use the dictation tool because it's actually really good. Their native dictation tool is their speech to text. So I'll be sometimes, if I'm thinking of something and I'm in the car, like I can bust that out and I can talk into it. And as long as you can get used to saying things like comma and period or, new line, once you get over that weird hurdle, then, I actually use it quite a bit. For my historical fiction novel, I wrote the whole thing on legal pads. It was like 3 legal pads, just longhand. Nice. And that was a really cool process because I found that by forcing myself to do that, the sentences came out completely different. Because when it takes longer for you to write, I found anyway that I was a lot more deliberate about what words I was using. I gave it more thought. I was still writing as fast as, I type as fast as I can think and I write as fast as I can think, but then it's like, oh, by the time you get to the end of the sentence, when you're writing longhand, it's like, oh, okay, I understand a little bit more what I was trying to say. It was a different experience and I'd never done it before. And I think I'd like to try it again because it did affect my writing in a totally different way. And I've heard Neil Gaiman say the same thing. Can't remember what book it was, but he wrote it in an old notebook with like a quill and an inkwell, because he was trying to get that feeling, I guess. And he was like, okay, if I'll put myself in the mindset of somebody who has to write like in this time period. And I saw an interview where he said that totally changed his approach to how that story went. I think it was an interview I saw with Brandon Sanderson where he said one of his pieces of advice to writers would be to find a job that has nothing to do with writing, that you can just, like, if you're able to, just leave that at work, so that then that writing can be your hobby, your thing you love that you can't wait to do. Because, a lot of people think, okay, that's what I love to do, so I want to find work there, and they find something that's parallel to it, and then they get disillusioned with the whole writing process, and they don't really, that's the last thing they want to do whenever they're done working. All you've gotten are silly answers, no silly questions.
Have we seen his book yet? Have we done that bit?
Yeah, we did. We did that. I got a stack. There they are.
We did that in like the first 2 minutes before anybody else actually joined us on it, so they haven't actually seen his book. Why don't we do that bit again, just for S's and G's?
Check it out. This is called The Fallen Odyssey. It's a portal fantasy novel. It's about a character from the real world who wakes up in a fantasy world and is the worst chosen one ever. That's the start of a series.
That is a great blurb. The worst chosen one ever. I am reading that book.
There we go. That's my elevator pitch for super short elevator ride. It doesn't make it a very appealing sounding character to spend time with, I guess, when I say like, oh, this is how dumb he is. But he's a kid from Earth who, his whole arc is that he shows up in this fantasy world and then he's trying to figure things out, and he doesn't have any special skills or powers. So one of the first things that happens in the story is that, he's recruited to go and rescue this kidnapped princess. So, like standard fantasy sort of story. And then after that happens, he finds out that she wasn't actually kidnapped. She was under arrest for the murder of the entire royal family. So it's like, then he's kind of like lost in the wilderness with this group of, outcasts sort of, and things just kind of spiral from there. Three audiobooks that I give away as like my reader magnet. Instead of ebooks, I do 3 audiobooks that I have started giving away. You go and you just enter your email address and I'll send you the link so that you can check these out. You can
Is that on your website or something?
It's on my website.
What's your website?
CoreyMcCullough.com, and then that is at /audio deal. You can download them, you can stream them. You can burn them on a CD. I don't know if people even do that anymore.
Wow,
It would
burn
be
them on a
possible.
CD. Look at you.
You could do it.
Get
But,
your pencil and your Maxell cassette tape and
That's
hook
right.
it up to your stereo system and press play and record, and you're good to go.
On 28 8-track tapes, you could have this audiobook to listen to. So
Now, when you recorded the 8 tracks, did you do it where the chapters went between the tracks, so you got that little hiss and a click and a hiss, and
exactly.
then you start a brand new chapter?
The only problem is you listen to it once and then it's no good anymore. So, they just fall apart. Instead of giving away an ebook like I used to do for my newsletter sign up thing, I do 3 audiobooks now because I just figure, what the heck, give it a shot. See if you can listen to a little bit of it and see if you like it, go for it. There you have it, some highlights of my time on the Bald and Balding Book Show with authors Mike Mallman and Ro Bushy. I encourage you to check out their books. They're available on their websites and also on Amazon, of course. My name is Corey McCullough. I'm an author of fantasy and science fiction, among other things. As I said in the video, you can download 3 audiobooks for free when you go to CoreyMcCullough.com/audio deal. Those are yours for free, no strings attached. Download, stream them, do whatever you want with them. They're yours. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Do all that stuff. Get busy reading or get busy writing.